crazy how everything that has been sung and everything that has been said ties right into my sermon today. I don't remember sharing this with everybody, but it seems like everybody has taken a glimpse into my sermon and taken little pieces and put it there. And so I'm just going to seal everything that's been said today. And I'm going to preach from this topic, and I want you to shout it back at me. Upward bound.
Upward bound.
I want you to shout it louder than that. Upward bound.
Upward bound.
Yeah, I'm coming from Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 3. Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 3. I will actually be jumping back and forth between Deuteronomy chapter 1 and chapter 2. But the highlighted verse for today is Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 3. And I'm reading from the New American Standard Bible. Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 3 says, "You have circled this mountain long enough.
Yeah.
Now turn north."
Yeah.
You have circled this mountain long enough. Now turn north. Shout back at me again. Upward bound.
Upward bound.
Here's something that I've learned, because here it is. We decided that we're going to strive for excellence. And one thing that I've learned is that we fail in the area of excellence in our life because we tend to walk in a circle.
Yeah.
We tend to do things over and over and over. Here's the thing that I've learned. I've learned that we start off in one mindset, but then as time goes, we go right back into what we're used to. Because what we're used to tends to be easy because it has become comfortable. Many of us want big things, but we don't want to try new things. And so here it is. We will try to get new things, trying to do slight moderations to the stuff we've been doing. Here it is. Like I say, I always use my weight loss journey as an example, because when I first started this thing, I was not completely committed to it. And so what would happen, Will, is that I would start seeing small results, and then I will fall back into what I was used to. I love hamburgers, and everybody knows that I love hamburgers. Matter of fact, my favorite place is Whataburger. I go get me a number 2 with cheese, root beer large with fries, with extra salt, all that good stuff. And what would happen is I would give that hamburger up, that number 2 up, for about 2 weeks max. And every now and then, as things start getting good and I start losing weight, I think it would be okay just to try it. I taste it, Alan, and fall right back into the same cycle of getting hamburgers every day. And so so what happens is my results will go good then bad, good then bad, good then bad. Never would I make it to the level of excellence in what I was striving, because I kept falling into the same cycle. I wonder if there's anybody in here that says, "Pastor Marcus, my situation is not weight loss, but I have found myself falling into the same cycle. I start off strong doing what I want to do, and then once I get a taste of what I was doing, I manage to fall back into it." I want to help you today, because you're not the only people in the room or the only people in this life that have had this same situation. I've come to find out in Deuteronomy that Israel was in the same place. Here it is. We know that Israel traveled and wandered in the wilderness for 40 years, but what we don't know is that wandering was just going in a circle. They were constantly going around the same mountain for 40 years. They were going around the same mountain for 40 years. Mount Horeb, the mountain that they received the 10 Commandments on, they still walked around that same place for 40 years. So it seems as though they were making progress, but the truth was they were going nowhere. They were doing a lot of busy work, but they wasn't doing anything that was profitable. They just kept going around in a circle, dealing with the same stuff, spilling revelation, but somehow, some way falling back in the same trap. And I wonder today that when we get to this point of our lives, that we ever wonder why it tends to keep happening. I love it because I did research and wondered why they kept going in a circle. I did my research. I said, why is it that they keep going in a circle? I found out it takes exactly, I always gave you the approximate number of days of how long it took to get from Egypt to the land that was promised to them, but the actual number of days was 11 days. It would take 11 days to get from where they were in prison, in slavery, to where they were promised. It took a short amount of time. It took less than 2 weeks for them to get from captivity to promise. In 2 weeks, captivity to promise, but it took them 40 years to get to promise coming out of captivity. Why? It's because when they were led in that direction, God gave them specific instructions. They did not obey. They got into battle and they lost.
All right.
Yeah.
And so every time they got to the place where it was time to go forward, they decided to go back the other way because they kept remembering what happened to them the first time they went there. I believe that a lot of us in our lives get stuck in a cycle because of past failures, past disappointments, past things that happened to us. And every time we get to the place where it's time to move forward, we decide to go back the other way because the other way is safer. That's what happened to Israel. They found themselves in a 40-year cycle because they messed up in the beginning and they could not get past the mindset that they failed and couldn't go forward. I wonder if I'm talking about somebody in here that says, you know what, Pastor Marcus, I have been going through some stuff and I've been taking a little bit too long. And it seems like every time I get to that spot, I manage to fall off. I wonder today you can understand that God is saying you circled this mountain long enough, it's time to move forward. He says it's time to move forward. He's telling them that you have to get past what you did. I put you in this cycle because the people that lost in the beginning needed to die off. They walked in a circle so that a generation that was disobedient could die off and he could have a new mindset on going north. Sometimes the process and sometimes cycles are necessary because there's some things we must lose. There's some people we have to get out of the way. There's some ideas that we have to come out of in order to go forward. But I look at it because when he said go north, I realized there were some things in our lives that we have to do before we can go forward. The first thing that this text is trying to teach us is that if we're going to go forward, we have to get tired. We have to get tired. They say, Pastor, that don't make sense. We have to get tired. Understand this. Being tired does not always require rest.
Right.
Sometimes it requires change. We have to understand that the only reason we deal with what we deal with and accept what we accept is because we have not come to a place where we're tired of it yet. We keep allowing people to walk over us and talk down to us because we haven't gotten tired of it yet. And I wonder if there's anybody in here that says, Pastor, you're saying that, but the truth is, I really am tired of dealing with this same stuff. Well, if you're tired, it's time to make a change. It reminds me of the woman who had the issue of blood. I believe she had the issue of blood for 16 years. And here it is, for 12 years. And here it is. She was in this situation. She went to doctors and doctors couldn't help her. She spent all she had and no one could help her. As a matter of fact, it says the more she tried to do it, the worse it got. And then she finally got tired of her issue. I love it because when she got tired of her issue, she changed the direction of her solution. She stopped looking this way and started looking this way. As a matter of fact, here it is. She said that Jesus is coming, and because I know he has power, I will push my way through the crowd and touch the hem of his garment. I love it because when she made up in her mind that she was going to change some stuff, that's when she found her issue to dry up. I believe somebody in here today is listening to this word and needs to understand that if you want things to change, if you want the cycle to end, you've got to get tired of going in a circle. And you've got to push for change. He told the children of Israel, you've circled long enough. Now it's time to go north. Second thing that I hear in this text is you have to take your hands off.
Wow.
You have to take your hands off. Here's the mistake that Israel made. They put their hands on a situation that God already handled. Here's what I'm trying to get you to see. if you read this text, if you read this text and you go to chapter 1, you'll realize that this was not the first time that he told them to stop circling this mountain, but to go north. It's not the first time that he told them to go to the hill country. As a matter of fact, in chapter 1, he said, you've been circling this mountain long time, go north. He says, but when you go to the hill country, don't bother anybody, just go through it. He says, because if you bother them, they'll rise up against you, and you're not equipped to fight yet. And so here it is, they, I guess, feeling themselves, went into the hill country, saw something that they liked, even though it was not the promise that God gave them. They put their hands on it and lost in the war. And they lost so bad that it caused them to be in a cycle for 40 years. I'm trying to get you to understand that you have to take your hands off of certain situations in your life so that God can handle it. See, the problem that we have is manifestation is delayed in our lives because we illegally touch stuff that God has already handled. We put our spin on it. We put how we think it should happen. We say what we feel like needs to be said. And the whole time God is saying, if you would just let me handle it, you would just have to walk through and don't worry about anything. So here it is. The second time, he says, I'm going to send you through Esau's son's land. He says, they will feed you, they will give you stuff, but don't rise up against them because that's what I promised them. That's not what I promised you.
Yeah.
He says, you'll go through Moab, the land of Lot and his sons. He says, they will feed you and you will have money to buy food and you'll make it, but don't bother them because they will rise up against you. And that's not the land I promised you. It's the land I promised them. See, so here is where we run into trouble. Oftentimes when we feel like there's a new time and a new season, we begin to see what's in front of us and think that's what God has for us. And we will tend to settle in other people's promises when it's not ours. And wonder why we still having trouble, even though it's what I feel as though God promised me. But I need you to understand that God is saying, I have it for you, but you got to take your hands off.
Yeah.
He says, walk through their land, but don't rise up because that's not what I promised you. Many people have gotten stuck in other promises when their promise was greater than the one they was walking through. Many people have become stagnant in their lives because they see greatness in what they're in now, not realizing that God is saying this is just what you're walking through. I need you to understand that where you are today is not the best you're going to be. The things that you have today is not all that God has for you to have. I heard my brother when he said, I feel good with where I am. But I need you to understand in this place that even though you feel good where you are, this is not what God promised. But God promised so much more in your life that if you get settled with where you are, you'll find yourself in a 40-year cycle when he was trying to do it in a year.
Yeah.
But what you have to do is take your hands off. Minister Arnold says it so well. You got to let go and let God. You got to get in a place that you trust him so much that even though the pathway looks dark and scary, you'll still walk through the pathway because you know that the Lord is with you. You will know that the Lord is with you because he'll tell you to do something and you have no resources to do it, but you'll do it anyway because the Lord is with you. Here's where we mess up. We say, Jesus, take the wheel, but we don't want to get out of the driver's seat.
Right?
We want him to have the wheel, but we got our foot on the gas and the pedal and the brake. And so we can stop when we want to and go fast when we want to while we're telling him to take the wheel. Here's another problem that I have. We tell God to take the wheel after we've already wrecked the car. And here's the truth. If I would have started this journey in the passenger seat, I would already be where the Lord wanted me to be. But because I got to have control, that's the problem with the prophetic now today. Many of us cannot operate in the prophetic because when we operate in the prophetic, it is taking our hands off and not having control. That's why churches are not growing like they should grow because they can't move in the prophetic. That's why people are not being released instead of coming to church every Sunday, but walking out of here bound because we can't move in the prophetic. And when we get to a place where we can take our hands off,
Yeah.
manifestation will happen in our lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout hands off.
Hands off.
I believe that's the biggest issue that we have, is that we have to be in control.
Yeah.
Not understanding that me being in control is detrimental to me
Yes, it
and
is.
generations after me.
Yeah.
Let's look at it. 11-year journey, but because they could not submit to God's command, they end up circling for 40 years, which means that there were generations after them that suffered in this journey when they could have been living in promise. Their children would not have had to go through what they went through. They would have just been born in promise if the parent would have did what the Lord told them to do. I need you to understand that it's not always the child. I don't know who I'm talking to. It's not always the child's fault that they get caught up in what they get caught up in. The truth is, if you would have done what the Lord told you to do, they wouldn't have woke up in a cycle. They would have been born in promise. I wonder if there's anybody in here that says, God, I repent now for bringing my child into a cycle and now bringing them into promise. But right now, in the name of Jesus, I break the cycle so I can walk into the promise. Oh my God. Here it is.
Come on, Pastor.
When we take hands off. I got another point, but we need to hear this. He said, yes, it looks good where you are, but this is Esau's son's land. I promised that for them. I didn't promise that for you. As a matter of fact, he says, your foot is walking, but this ain't your land. I find it ironic that he told Joshua right after this that everywhere your foot tread, I've given it to you. But here's the funny part. Their feet had been treading for a long time, and he gave them none of that, which means the truth here is that God is not giving me everywhere I decide to go.
Yeah. That's right.
But he's given me what he's given me, and my footsteps are ordered in their direction.
Yeah.
We got it twisted. We think that we can walk into any room. And because my foot tread in this room, that God gave it to me. And here it is, you're walking into something that will destroy you because God said that ain't even the room that I have designed for you. This is the room that's going to get you to the room.
Wow. Yeah.
That's what he said. He said, you're going to go through Esau's land. You're going to get food, you're going to get provision, but don't come up against them because it's not yours.
Yeah.
You're going to go through Lot's land. You're going to get food, you're going to get provision, but don't come up against them because it's not yours. Now I understand why he had to kill off the first generation that messed up in chapter 1, because if he'd have had that same generation as advisors in chapter 2, they would have been walking around that mountain another 40 years.
Right.
Hello.
Yeah. That's good.
Here it is. We have to get to a place where our hands are either raised or behind our backs.
Yeah.
Because when we put it on the situation, we tend to mess it up. I heard a story about a doctor who was a great doctor, and he was having, he was a baby doctor, the one that delivers the babies, and he would deliver the baby, and after the baby was delivered, the baby would get a high fever and die. This was in early years. They would get high fever and die. And he would do it again, and they would get a high fever and die. And he could not figure out why every time a baby was born and he delivered that baby, it would get a high fever and die. And here's what we found out through research, is that what he was doing is he was touching these babies when they were born without gloves on. And every contaminant that was on his hand got on the baby and killed the baby. And so here it is, we tend to kill our blessings the same way because we touch them when they are not ready to be touched. And when we do that, all of the contaminants that are on us gets on it. And we don't receive the full benefit of the blessing because we're touching it too soon. But I wonder if there's anybody in here that says, Lord, I need you to sterilize my mind to the point where I know that you are the deliverer and I am the receiver. And when you deliver it, you get glory and I get benefit. Is there anybody in here that says, I'm willing to step back and give him glory and receive the benefit?
Yeah.
But you got to take your hands off. Shout, hands off.
Hands off.
My last point, and I'm out of the way, is once you do these first two things, get tired, make some changes. Learn how to take your hands off. Give God the control. The last thing you must do is don't turn back.
Wow.
Yeah.
He says, you have circled this mountain long enough. Go north. You've circled this mountain long enough. Go north. Wait a minute, God. The last time we went north, we came up against opposition. And we lost. That's why we keep turning at the hill country. Because we don't feel like going through that again. Here it is. When you run into situations that seem that it has defeated you, it's not for you to turn back to it. It's for you to learn from it.
Yeah.
When you learn from it, you're able to handle it when it rises up again. Here's how you know you've learned and moved on. If the person that did what they did to you walks in the room and changes your whole demeanor, you haven't learned from it and moved on.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is steady walking around this mountain. When we talk about a situation that you've been through and you tend to keep falling back into the situation, you have not healed, you have not learned, and you're still walking around your mountain.
Wow.
Here's what we must understand. We memorialize stuff in the wrong way. And it's the memorializing of stuff that causes us to stay in a cycle. It's when we take what happened and give it an anniversary date and celebrate what happened every single year of our life. It never allows us to move forward because we keep turning back.
Yeah.
But we have to honor. I understand what you're saying. But here's the thing. You must understand that there's a big reason why the windshield in a car is way bigger than the rearview mirror in a car. I need you to hear me because you need to see more going forward than you do going backwards. I need you to know that if God intended for us to go backwards, then we would still be in slavery where we were before. But here it is. His intention is for us to move forward. And if we want to move forward, we can't turn back. Ask Lot's wife what happens when you turn back. Here it is. She was put in a position that she had to stay there for a long time. As a matter of fact, she was turned into a statue, means she was stuck right where she was. And every time you look back, you get in a place where you're stuck right where you are. But I wonder if there's anybody in here that says, I'm tired of being stuck where I am, and I'm going to stop looking back, and I'm going to move forward.
Yeah. That's good.
He said, you have circled this mountain long enough. You've been doing the same thing long enough. You've been the same thing over and over, over and over, over and over. When I was 15 years old, I lost my stepdad. Stepdad was very important to me in my life. And here's the thing. I began to memorialize the day he left me. Matter of fact, I still remember the day. He left me September 13th, 1996. He left that day. Matter of fact, I take that back to September 14th, 1996, because I remember it was the day after Tupac died. And so here it is. He died on that day. And from 15, I held on to it. 16, I held on to it. 17, I held on to it. 18, I held on to it. 19, I held on to it. 20, I held on to it. 21, I held on to it. And look at what the Lord was doing while I was circling this mountain. The whole whole time, he brought my real father back into my life. And my real father was blessing me beyond measure. But I could not appreciate the blessings of my real father because I was still circling around the mountain of losing my stepfather.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Y'all don't
Yeah.
get it.
We got it.
Y'all
We
don't
got
get
it.
it. Y'all don't get it. It took me years to move forward. Imagine all the stuff that I missed in the years of circling that mountain. Somebody in here says, Pastor, you went through it for 6 years, but I've been going through it for 30 years.
My God.
Yeah.
I've been circling this same mountain because my mama wasn't there for me. And I've been circling this same mountain because I was touched inappropriate as a child. And I've been circling this same mountain. I was messed over in relationship. And I've been circling this same mountain. I should have been done with school, but I ain't done yet. And I've been circling this same mountain. People talked about me and dogged me out as a child. And I had low self-esteem. And I kept circling this mountain. But today, I declare in the name of Jesus that every cycle that we've been circling is broken. And we can move forward
Yeah.
and live in excellence.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't need this anymore.
Yeah. I want to know.
I believe
Come on.
that there's somebody in this room that says, Pastor, I've been circling all my life. And the problem is, I want to get out, but I don't know how to get out. I know that it's killing me, but I don't know how to stop it. I see it destroying my life, but I just keep falling into this cycle. I don't know who I'm talking to, but I hear the Lord say that if you would just get to a place where you can completely turn it over to me, I can pull you out of this cycle.
Yeah.
You get to a place where you believe that it's bigger than you. Here's the thing. We go through this cycle and we go into a shell because we feel like we can handle it better like that. And the Lord is saying, every time you go into a shell, it adds years to your cycle. Why? Because I've given you the command to cast all of your cares upon me. And every time you close up, you don't pray, you don't read, you turn against me. And it adds years to your cycle. But right now, in the name of Jesus, I speak against every cycle in this room. I speak against every curse in this room. That it would break today. That generations after us will not have to deal with the circling of the mountain, but the benefits of the promise. Our kids will feel